Imagine you're out maybe hiking or perhaps on a trip somewhere quite different, like a desert, and you see a camel, or maybe you're closer to home and spot a deer. Beautiful, right?
Absolutely.
But then you notice something a bit odd on the animal. It looks like, well, warts, maybe even kind of cauliflower-shaped ones on a camel.
Hmm.
And your first thought is probably, what is that? Is the animal okay? And let's be honest, probably. Can I get that?
Yeah, that's a very common reaction. Totally understandable when you see something unusual like that on an animal, and that's exactly what we're going to get into today.
That's right. We're doing a deep dive into papillomatosis. It's a viral thing, causes these wart-like growth. We're going to look specifically at camels and deer, two quite different animals facing this.
Right.
Our goal here is to unpack the science, clear up some, common worries, especially about whether you need to be concerned, and uncover some pretty surprising stuff about animal health and immunity. We've gone through the sources you sent to really get to the heart of it.
So let's start with the basics. Papillomatosis, fundamentally, it's a viral disease. You see these benign wart-like growths, mostly on the skin, sometimes mucous membranes.
Okay.
But the really, really crucial point right off the bat is that it's caused by species-specific papillomaviruses.
Species-specific, that sounds very important. What does that mean exactly? Like, how they work?
It's fundamental. It means the virus affecting a camel is genetically a different beast entirely from the one affecting a deer. They've evolved alongside their hosts for, well, ages. So they don't just jump between species easily, and certainly not, from these animals to humans. We're talking about double-stranded DNA viruses here.
Which is pretty standard for viruses.
Yeah, quite common. But their target is very specific. The basal layer of the epithelium. That's the deep dividing layer of skin cells. That's where they set up shop and cause those growths.
So it's not some generic wart virus out there. It's like a specific key for a specific lock on that animal.
Precisely. A highly targeted operation within that specific host species.
Okay, got it. So with that foundation, let's focus on camels first. The main virus here is Camelus dromedarius papillomavirus, or CDPV. And the sources mention two types, CDPV1 and CDPV2.
That's right. Those are the ones identified in dromedaries. And what's interesting is how these camel warts tend to look. They're usually solid, they don't seem painful, and they feel firm. They might start small, maybe a bit pinkish, but they can develop into these quite rough, almost cauliflower-looking horny masses. Color can vary gray or just the normal skin color.
And the size, you mentioned it can range from tiny, like 0.3 centimeters,
Barely noticeable, yeah.
all the way up to 10 centimeters. That's almost 4 inches across. That's quite a lump.
It really is. And you typically see them on the lips, the brisket area, neck, chest, forearms, places like that.
Common spots.
But they can also pop up on mucous membranes inside the mouth, genitalia, even the conjunctiva of the eye.
Oh, wow.
And that's where they can cause more trouble. If they get big or numerous there, it could lead to discomfort, difficulty eating, maybe even breathing problems if they block things up.
Yeah, you can imagine a young camel struggling to eat if its lips are covered. That makes sense.
Exactly. It moves from just cosmetic to actually impacting their well-being.
And who usually gets this? The sources pointed to young camels, mostly under 3 years old.
That's the primary group, yeah, though older ones aren't immune. And there seems to be a bit of a seasonal link outbreaks, often noticed in the late rainy season. Sometimes it even shows up alongside other skin issues like contagious eczema or camel pox.
Right. But despite how dramatic these warts can look, most camels seem okay. Like they keep eating normally.
For the most part, yes. Most affected camels stay in pretty good general health. Appetite's normal. You might see some reports of, slight lack of appetite or some scratching, but it's not the norm.
Okay.
The real problems tend to arise in severe cases. Lots of papillomas, maybe leading to secondary bacterial infections, or like we said, physically getting in the way of eating or, say, milk production in females.
So how do vets diagnose it? Just by looking?
Often, yeah. The appearance is pretty characteristic. But for confirmation, you could do a biopsy and look at it under the microscope. That's histopathology. You'd see things like epidermal hyperplasia, acanthosis, and the specific thing called koilocytosis.
Koilocytosis?
Yeah, it's a classic sign of papillomavirus cells look kind of swollen with halos around the nuclei. Or you can use PCR tests to detect the actual viral DNA.
Okay. Now, management. This is where it got really interesting for me. It's generally self-limiting.
That's the key. The camel's immune system usually kicks in, fights it off, and the warts regress and fall off on their own. often within a few months.
So you often don't even need to treat it.
Exactly. Treatment is frequently unnecessary. Nature kind of handles it.
And trying to remove them surgically, especially early on, might actually be counterproductive, make them come back.
That's what the research suggests, yeah. Interfering can sometimes stimulate recurrence.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a really big one that is causing problems, blocking something, then surgery might be on the table. Or maybe cryotherapy freezing or electrocautery for smaller ones.
Right.
People have also tried things like immunostimulants or making vaccines from the camel's own warts, but the results seem pretty variable, not a guaranteed fix.
So prevention is more about good management, hygiene, biosecurity.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Isolating affected animals if you can, disinfecting equipment, try not to overcrowd them, minimizing direct contact helps limit the spread. Standard biosecurity stuff.
Okay, now the big question, the one probably on everyone's mind, zoonotic potential. Can I catch warts from a camel?
Right, and the answer is a clear no. These camel papillomaviruses are, like we stressed, species-specific. They're not known to infect humans or other types of animals.
And there was that study you mentioned with the herders.
Yeah, fascinating study. Herders working closely with infected camels did have warts sometimes, but when they tested them, the warts were caused by human papillomavirus types. There was absolutely no evidence of transmission from the camels. It really drives home that species barrier. Your warts are from human viruses, their warts are from camel viruses?
That's a huge relief and a really important point. Okay, so no need to panic if you see a warty camel.
None at all from a transmission perspective.
All right, let's switch gears then. Let's talk deer, also known as deer warts or cutaneous fibromas. Common in North America, white-tailed deer, mule deer.
Black-tailed deer too, yeah. And these look different from the camel warts.
How so?
They're typically described as firm, round, hairless growths, and they're usually pigmented dark brown or even black.
Right, not really cauliflower-like.
Not usually, no. More like solid, dark lumps. And again, size varies wildly. Small nodules, sure, but sometimes you see these huge masses. The sources say over 8 inches across.
8 inches, wow.
Yeah, really substantial. They can be single or in clumps, often on the head, neck, forelimbs, kind of similar locations to the camel in some ways.
And just like camels, they can get them on mucous membranes too. Mouth, eyes.
Mouth, conjunctiva, genitalia. And again, if they get really extensive there, it could cause problems with eating or breathing. And, any large growth like that, especially if it gets bumped or scraped, could potentially get ulcerated or infected. That's always a risk for the animal in the wild.
Sure. Who gets these deer fibromas? Still the young ones.
Mostly, yes. Typically, deer under 2 years old seem most susceptible. And interestingly, there's a higher rate reported in bucks, in males.
Okay, and how does it spread? Similar ideas. Contact.
It's thought to be mainly through direct contact with an infected deer, or maybe indirectly, touching contaminated surfaces where an infected deer rubbed, especially if the receiving deer has a scrape or break in the skin.
And the butt connection, I found that really interesting. The idea that fighting during the rut might play a role.
It's a really plausible hypothesis, isn't it?
Yeah.
All that starring, rubbing antlers, potentially breaking the skin apart, it could easily create openings for the virus to get in and spread more effectively among the males during that intense period.
Makes total sense.
The sources also mention other possibilities, like maybe biting insects could transmit it, or even vertical transmission, mother to fawn.
Right. But again, the key message seems to be that for most deer, these fibromas, they're not a major health crisis.
Exactly. In the vast majority of cases, they don't seem to seriously harm the deer's overall health. They're not a big driver of mortality.
They're just there, on the skin.
Pretty much. They only really become a significant problem if they get so big or are located somewhere, like over an eye or in the mouth, that they physically interfere with seeing, eating, or moving around properly.
And like the camels, deer also tend to develop immunity. The fibromas go away on their own.
That's right. It's typically self-limiting for deer, too. Their immune system mounts a response, and over time, the fibromas regress and disappear.
Which means for wild deer, treatment isn't really a thing.
No, it's just not practical or considered necessary for wild populations. Nature usually sorts it out.
Okay, so this brings us to a very practical question, especially for hunters out there. If you harvest a deer that has these fibromas, first, any risk to humans? And second, is the meat okay to eat?
Excellent. Very common questions. And the answers are reassuring. First, just like the camel virus, the papillomavirus causing deer fibromas is highly species-specific. It is not known to infect humans, pets, or livestock.
Good.
And second, because these fibromas are just skin deep, they're confined to the skin itself. So the advice is clear. The meat from a harvested deer with fibromas is considered perfectly safe for consumption.
So you just trim away the affected skin area, basically.
Exactly. The growths themselves aren't penetrating into the muscle tissue, so no worries about your venison stew making you warty.
That's great practical advice. Okay, so let's connect the dots here. We've looked at camels, we've looked at deer. What are the big similarities and differences?
Well, the similarities are pretty striking, actually.
Yeah.
Both conditions caused by those species-specific papillomaviruses. That's huge. Both generally benign and, crucially, both tend to be self-limiting. The animal's immune system usually wins in the end. Both are more common in young animals. Diagnosis relies on similar things looking at them, maybe histopathology, maybe PCR. And importantly for you listening, neither is known to be zoonotic to humans.
Right. Big relief on that last one. And the differences, mostly in appearance and maybe how it spreads?
Yeah, subtle but distinct differences. The camel's sort of cauliflower look versus the deer's firm, dark, round fibromas. The specific virus types are different, of course.
Okay.
And then those interesting potential transmission factors. Maybe the rutting behavior being significant for deer spread, while perhaps close contact in herds is more key for camels.
And maybe slightly different impacts, like milk production worries in camels versus the hunting and meat safety question for deer.
Exactly. Though thankfully, the meat is safe in the deer case. So what does all this tell us, stepping back?
Well, for me, it really highlights just how incredibly diverse viruses are and how nature has these built-in ways of managing health. And understanding that species specificity thing feels so important for not getting unnecessarily alarmed.
Absolutely. It's not just a biological curiosity. It's a result of millions of years of coevolution. Viruses adapting very precisely to their hosts. It's kind of nature's checks and balances in action. You see these things that look alarming, but often the system has a way of handling it without catastrophe.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that things aren't always as scary as they first look.
Precisely.
So just to recap for everyone, papillomatosis in camels and deer. Yes, it looks striking, maybe even a bit worrying at first sight, but it's common, often clears up on its own, and it's caused by very specific viruses that stick to their own species. They pose no threat to humans or other animals.
It's just a fascinating glimpse into the specific biological world of each animal.
Definitely. Which kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, the world is just packed with these hidden biological stories, complex immune reactions, all this interconnectedness we barely scratch the surface of. How many other things in nature that might look alarming or weird at first would actually turn out to be, just another example of nature's resilience or a really specific adaptation once you actually did a deep dive like this?
That's a great thought. What other seemingly strange or even scary animal conditions might just be normal in their own way, part of the natural balance?
Exactly. Something interesting to think about next time you're out in nature.